There's something about a Libra woman. She makes things feel easy, effortless, like everything is just naturally flowing around her. She knows how to keep the peace, how to keep things light, how to make people feel seen without ever giving too much away. And for most people, that's enough. But for a Scorpio man, it's not. Because he doesn't just want the surface. He doesn't just want charm or beauty or ease. He wants depth. He wants access. He wants to know what's underneath all that composure. And that's where the tension begins because the more a Libra woman keeps things balanced, the more a Scorpio man starts to lean in, trying to read her, trying to feel her out, trying to figure out what she's not showing. And what starts as attraction quickly turns into a quiet push and pull between someone who keeps things light and someone who refuses to. Chapter 1, the initial attraction. At first, it doesn't feel complicated, it actually feels easy. The connection between a Libra woman and a Scorpio man usually starts off smooth, almost too smooth. The conversation flows, the energy feels natural, and there's an unspoken understanding that doesn't need to be forced. And for a Libra woman, that matters. She's not drawn to chaos right away. She's drawn to what feels harmonious, what feels mutual, what feels like it's unfolding without pressure. And the Scorpio man, in the beginning, he knows how to meet her there. He's observant, present, intentional with his attention. He doesn't come off overwhelming, at least not yet. Instead, he leans into her world just enough to make her feel comfortable while quietly studying everything about her. The way she responds, the way she keeps things light, the way she reveals just enough, but never too much. And that's what catches him because a Libra woman isn't closed off, but she's also not fully open. There's a balance to her, a level of control in how she shows up. And to a Scorpio man, that feels like a mystery. Not the kind that's obvious or dramatic, but the kind that's subtle, layered, and a little bit out of reach. And that's where the attraction deepens. Because while she's enjoying the ease of the connection, he's already becoming aware of something more, something he can't quite access yet, something he wants to understand. And without realizing it, what started off as mutual attraction is already beginning to shift into something a little more focused on his end, a little more intentional, a little more consuming. Chapter 2, how they see each other. What makes this connection different is that they're both aware of each other, just in very different ways. A Scorpio man looks at a Libra woman and sees something control, but not empty. She's composed, thoughtful in how she responds, careful without seeming guarded. And that's what catches his attention because he can tell there's more beneath the surface. She just doesn't give it away easily. So to him, she becomes something to understand, not to chase loudly, but to study. And the more she maintains that balance, the more focused he becomes on what she's not showing. But on the other side of it, the Libra woman isn't unaware. She sees him too. She notices the intensity almost immediately, the way he looks at her a little longer than necessary, the way his attention feels more intentional than casual. And at first, she doesn't pull away from it because it feels different. There's depth there, presence, a level of emotional awareness she doesn't always come across. And that draws her in. But at the same time, she also feels something she can't fully explain, a weight to his energy, a seriousness that contrasts her natural lightness. And while part of her is curious, another part of her instinctively keeps things balanced. She doesn't lean in too fast. She doesn't reveal everything at once. Not because she's hiding, but because that's how she maintains control of herself. And that's where the dynamic quietly forms. because the more she keeps things measured, the more he starts looking deeper. And the more he leans in with intensity, the more she adjusts to keep things from becoming too heavy, too quickly. So, without either of them saying it, a rhythm begins to develop. One is trying to go deeper, the other is trying to keep things steady. And neither one is wrong for it, but that difference in how they approach the connection is what slowly starts to shape everything that comes next. Chapter 3, the push and pull. This is usually the point where things stop feeling effortless, not because the connection is gone, but because it's changing. The Scorpio man is no longer just observing, he's engaging with intention. He wants more consistency, more depth, more emotional presence from her. And he doesn't always say that directly, but it shows in how he moves, the way he lingers a little longer, the way his tone shifts when she stays on the surface, the way he starts to test the space between them. And the Libra woman feels it. She feels the shift from light to something heavier, from natural to something that feels like it's asking more of her. And her instinct isn't to confront it, it's to rebalance. So instead of meeting him with the same intensity, she softens it, keeps the conversation easy, redirects when things feel too deep, too fast, maintains a sense of calm in the connection, not to avoid him, but to keep things from tipping too far in one direction. But to a Scorpio man, that doesn't feel like balance. It feels like distance because, from his perspective, he's leaning in and she's not fully meeting him there. And that's where the push and pull begins. He leans in more, trying to get closer, trying to understand, trying to feel something real. And she, almost without realizing it, leans back just enough to keep her footing, not disconnected, not uninterested, just measured. And that difference creates tension because now both of them are adjusting to each other, but in opposite ways. He becomes more focused, more aware, sometimes even more intense, and she becomes more aware of that and instinctively keeps things from becoming too consuming. So the connection doesn't break, it stays intact, but it starts to move in waves, closer, then steadier, then closer again, and neither one fully understands why it no longer feels as simple as it did in the beginning. They just know something deeper has taken over. Chapter 4, Control versus Balance. At the core of this dynamic, this isn't just about attraction, it's about how each of them maintains stability. Because a Scorpio man and a Libra woman don't approach connection the same way, even if it looks smooth on the surface. A Scorpio man stabilizes through control, not in an obvious, overpowering way, but internally. He wants to understand what he's dealing with. He wants emotional clarity. He wants to know where he stands. And the deeper he feels, the more that need grows. He starts paying closer attention, reading between the lines, looking for consistency in her words, her energy, her presence, because for him, depth without clarity feels unstable. And he doesn't sit comfortably in that. But a Libra woman, she stabilizes through balance. She doesn't need to define everything right away. She doesn't need to go to the deepest point immediately. She keeps things steady by allowing space, by pacing the connection, by not letting emotions take over too quickly. And to her, that is control, it's self control, it's knowing when to lean in and when to stay centered. So while he's trying to gain a sense of control by going deeper, she's maintaining hers by not going too far too fast. And that's where the disconnect quietly builds because, from his perspective, her balance starts to feel like withholding, like she's holding something back, like she's choosing not to meet him where he is. But from her perspective, his intensity starts to feel like pressure, like the connection is being pulled into something heavier than it needs to be. And neither one is wrong. They're just operating from two completely different instincts. One is trying to define the connection, the other is trying to preserve it. And the more this goes unspoken, the more tension builds beneath everything that still looks calm on the surface, because now it's not just about how they feel, it's about how they're trying to manage what they feel. And that's where things start to get complicated. Chapter 5. When it starts to get complicated, at some point, this stops being about pace or attention or who's leaning in more, and it becomes about something deeper, how they experience emotion itself, because a Scorpio man doesn't do anything halfway. When he feels something, he goes into it. He wants to understand it, explore it, get to the core of it, not just what's being shown, but what's underneath it. And when it comes to a Libra woman, that pull becomes even stronger because she doesn't fully reveal herself all at once. There's always a layer of composure, a level of emotional control that keeps things from getting too heavy. And to him, that feels like distance. Even if she's present, even if she's engaged, even if she genuinely likes him, if he can't feel her at the depth he's operating in, it starts to feel like something is missing. So he leans in more emotionally, asks deeper questions, creates moments that go beyond surface level interaction, tries to pull her into a space where things are more raw, more real. But the Libra woman doesn't respond to that by diving in. She responds by stabilizing, not pulling away completely, but softening the intensity, keeping things from becoming emotionally overwhelming. Because for her, connection isn't about losing control in emotion, it's about staying present within it. And that's where the disconnect sharpens, because now he's not just noticing her pace, he's feeling the difference. The space between how deeply he experiences things and how she regulates them. And for the first time, that can create doubt. He starts to wonder if she's holding back, if she's not as invested, if what he's feeling is deeper than what she's willing to give, while she starts to feel the weight of his expectations, not because he's demanding anything outright, but because his presence alone starts to feel more intense than before. And now both of them are aware of something unspoken. He wants to go deeper. She wants to keep things steady. And the question becomes, how long can both of those exist in the same space before something has to give? Chapter 6. The breaking point or shift. At some point, this dynamic can't stay in that in-between space anymore, where everything is felt but nothing is fully addressed, because the tension that's been building quietly eventually reaches a point where it needs direction, and it usually shows up in subtle ways first. The Scorpio man may start pulling back slightly, not because he's lost interest, but because he's no longer sure where he stands. He stops overextending, stops leaning in the same way, becomes more controlled with his energy, because if he feels like he's going deeper alone, he'll start to protect himself. Meanwhile, the Libra woman notices the shift immediately. The energy feels different, less intense, but also less present. And that can create a different kind of tension for her. Because now, instead of managing his intensity, she's reacting to his absence of it. And that's when things start to turn. Because this is the moment where she may lean in more, not dramatically, but enough to re engage the connection, to restore the balance that's now been disrupted. But here's the catch: when she leans in, it's often at the exact moment he's pulling back. And that creates a disconnect in timing. One person is opening while the other is closing. And unless they recognize what's happening, they can end up missing each other completely. Because a Scorpio man needs to feel emotional certainty before he fully reopens. And a Libra woman needs the connection to feel natural before she fully invests. So now, instead of moving in sync, they're moving in response, reacting instead of connecting. And this is the breaking point, not always in the form of an argument, but in the form of a realization that something about this connection is no longer flowing the way it once did. And from here, it can go one of two ways. They either become more intentional and finally meet each other with clarity, or they slowly start to let the connection slip without ever fully understanding why. Chapter 7. Can this actually work? So the real question is, can a Libra woman and a Scorpio man actually make this work? The answer is yes, but not in the way people think, because this isn't a naturally easy pairing. It's not the kind of connection that just flows without awareness. It requires adjustment on both sides. And more importantly, it requires honesty about what each person actually needs. A Scorpio man has to understand that not everything is meant to be uncovered all at once, and that depth doesn't always look intense, and that someone can feel deeply without expressing it in the same way he does. If he mistakes her balance for a lack of emotion, he'll push her away, trying to get something she was already giving just differently. And a Libra woman has to recognize that his intensity isn't always pressure. Sometimes it's presence. It's the way he connects, the way he builds trust, the way he tries to create something that goes beyond surface level interaction. If she keeps softening everything to stay comfortable, she may unintentionally create the very distance she's trying to avoid, because this dynamic only works when both people stop interpreting each other through their own lens and start understanding each other for who they actually are, not who they're used to, not what feels easiest, but what's real in front of them. Because at its best, this connection has something rare. It has depth and balance, intensity and awareness, but at its worst, it becomes a quiet mismatch where one person feels too much and the other feels like they can't fully be themselves. So it's not about whether this pairing works, it's about whether both people are willing to meet somewhere in the middle without losing themselves in the process. Chapter 8. Who feels this connection the strongest? When it comes to a Libra woman and a Scorpio man, the connection doesn't feel the same on both sides. Not because one person cares more, but because they experience it differently. And if we're looking at it astrologically, certain placements tend to feel this dynamic more intensely than others. A Scorpio man, especially one with strong Scorpio placements like a Scorpio Venus, moon, or a full stellium, is naturally wired for depth. He doesn't just experience attraction, he internalizes it. So when he connects with someone who feels balanced, composed, and slightly out of reach, like a Libra Venus or Libra Sun, it doesn't stay surface level for him. It becomes something he thinks about, analyzes, revisits, because Scorpio energy isn't satisfied with just enough. It wants to fully understand what it's feeling. And when it can't, that's usually when the connection lingers the most. But on the other side of it, a Libra woman or someone with strong Libra placements, especially in Venus, experiences connection in a more regulated way. She can feel something deeply and still maintain emotional control, still move with awareness, still keep herself balanced. So even if she's affected by the connection, she doesn't always express it in a way that matches his intensity. And that creates a perception that he feels it more. But here's the nuance, it's not always that he feels more. It's that he processes it more intensely and more visibly over time, while she processes it internally, quietly, and often with more detachment. Now, if we layer in other placements, this dynamic can shift. If she has water placements like a Cancer or Pisces moon, She may feel the depth more than she lets on. If he has air placements like a Gemini Aquarius or a Libra moon, he may intellectualize his feelings instead of fully sitting in them. Closing, the lasting impact of this connection. No matter how this connection ends, it doesn't leave either of them the same, because a Scorpio man doesn't forget a Libra woman who made him pause, who didn't immediately open up, who didn't lose herself in his intensity, who stayed balanced, even when he was trying to understand her at a deeper level. She becomes something he reflects on, not just because of how she made him feel, but because of what he couldn't fully figure out. And that stays with him in a way that's quiet but lasting. And for the Libra woman, a Scorpio man leaves a different kind of imprint. He shows her what it feels like to be looked at beyond the surface, to be felt, not just appreciated. And even if his intensity felt overwhelming at times, it also made something clear, that there are connections in life that ask for more than just ease, more than just comfort, something deeper. And that realization doesn't just disappear, because even if they don't last, they shift each other's awareness. He learns that not everything meaningful needs to be controlled or fully understood to exist. And she learns that not everything deep needs to be softened to be safe. And maybe they don't meet perfectly in the middle. Maybe the timing is off. Maybe the approach never fully aligns. But the impact, that part stays. Because some connections aren't just about whether they work out, they're about what they reveal about yourself, your patterns, and what you're actually capable of feeling. And this is the kind you don't just move on from quickly. It lingers in perspective, in memory, in the way you approach the next connection, just a little differently than before.